is indeed 6 o'clock. The meeting will come to order. We'll have the city clerk perform roll call first.
Commissioner Berger,
Here.
Commissioner Wood. I see you. Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin,
Here.
Commissioner Krieger,
Here.
Commissioner Jack Shaw,
Here.
Commissioner Hayworth,
Present.
Chair Halleck.
Yes, I'm here. And item number 2, if we'll all rise and Mr. Birch, please post the colors and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Flag. United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands,
One
one
nation.
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Item number 3, to review the consent agenda. We'll adopt our August 11, 2021 Planning Commission minutes. Anyone like to pull anything from the minutes? Any discussion in order, or I'll entertain a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion,
Go ahead, George.
make a motion to approve as submitted.
Do I hear a second? I think I heard 3, so.
Second.
Good enough. Minutes from the previous meeting are approved. And item number 4, public comments. Anyone wishing to address the commission on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now. The public may comment on any other matter listed on the agenda at the time the matter is being considered by the commission. There will be a time limit of not more than 3 minutes for each speaker. No action will be taken by the commission on matters brought up under this item, and all comments will be referred to staff. And so now at this time, we will open public comment.
Jim's the only one there.
I am not
Come on,
seeing,
Jim.
I am not seeing many members, if any members of the public, which is surprising to me. I thought with the content of our meeting tonight, we might have a bit more of a turnout, but it is as it is. Public comment is hereby closed. Item number 5, reports. Our building activity report. Assuming all have had time to review the building report for September 2021, which is actually previous month. Anyone like to pull anything other than myself? I would. Actually, I'm curious as to the, is this complete and up to date, the building report, City Clerk Manami?
There are some additions that needed to be made. We were in a time crunch putting this together. So it is not as current as I'd like it to be.
All right. The only one that stood out to me is, well, my project.
Yes.
I couldn't help but notice, but
Yeah.
trust me, it's still active. So let's move on to, before we do, motion to accept the building report.
I move.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
As I. And item number 7, new business. We have 2 items actually. The first of which is to consider our draft accessory dwelling units, our ADU ordinance. We've received a letter from the city attorney. This, of course, is a product of earlier this year, mid-April. There was a public workshop and input outreach to and from the public. We've also had a joint city council and planning commission meeting wherein accessory dwelling units were a topic of discussion. And so City Attorney Lorca has, with that gathered information and more recent state laws and regulations, drafted this document for our consideration. I will open it to the Planning Commission for, actually, City Attorney Lorca, would you like to present the letter or any commentary before we begin?
That's at the pleasure of the commission. I know that you folks, many of you listened in to the meeting earlier this year with respect to ADU law, that we had the open workshop, the joint meeting, as you mentioned. I'm happy to go through my PowerPoint again, but in the interest of time, if folks are familiar with it, I can answer specific questions. What I would say from a 30,000 foot level is the feedback that we got at the workshop. There's not a ton of discretion for the city here. There's a lot of state preemption, and state law is very permissive here. 4-foot setbacks, 16-foot height, minimum square footages, all that stuff that's in there. So because the state law is pretty permissive, I did not take the liberty of making setbacks 3 feet or 2 feet. I think you would have a neighborhood after you for that type of thing. You know, or height, things like that, where you can exercise some discretion. So the ordinance you have before you, the draft ordinance, is indeed something that mirrors state law and follows state law. But I haven't gone more permissive than state law because, as I mentioned, state law is already pretty darn permissive. We have done a few things that was very clear at the outreach meeting, which is to prohibit the short-term rental of accessory dwelling units. It was clear from the community that's not something they wanted because it's not the intent of the ADU law, which is to provide housing. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions or go through the presentation if folks would like. And otherwise, we'll be taking notes. And again, this is before you for recommendation to the city council, if that's the pleasure of the planning commission. Alternatively, if there's major changes or more research you'd like to see, you can always direct me to come back with certain revisions. And before I sort of do my dismount here, I'll thank you for letting me play planner here on this one. It's I'm sure a planner would have had cool charts and graphs and that type of thing. I'm a lawyer, it's more about words. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. So we'll touch on that for efficacy and efficiency. Best use of resources, I would tend to agree with the City Attorney Lorca that we're all well-versed and have had ample exposure to the various study sessions and the material contained within. And so I would be for waiving the need for the PowerPoint presentation or any further presentation from City Attorney Lorca. An informal vote, a nod, is everyone all right with that? Or I think we're all in accord there?
Ben?
Great.
If I could interrupt just a moment, just to be clear.
We will have an opportunity to, I'll go through and everyone will have an opportunity to make comments, of course. And thanks for putting this together for us, City Attorney Lorca.
My pleasure.
I noticed myself, it's quite brief and succinct and to the point. And yes, there was a lot of input from the public as well as the City Council and Planning Commission, but understandably, as you mentioned, state law greatly supersedes what we can do on a local level. And in layman's terms, our hands are tied in many ways as far as the approval of accessory dwelling units. There is just one point that I would really like to push for. I feel very strongly, you've kind of touched on it, that the fast track streamlined ministerial approval of accessory dwelling units, is the intention is to provide and make available, and it's a reaction to the affordable housing crisis in California. And one thing that I brought up in our joint session meeting is that where short-term rentals are concerned, that not only is the ADU itself not an option for a short-term rental, but I felt as though, and a couple other commissioners concurred somewhat, that that neither should be the primary residence. Because who's to say that a primary resident couldn't occupy and take up that space in the ADU and then turn their home into a short-term rental? I understand the homeowner's point of view and wanting to have an income generating dwelling, but it was my feeling that basically if one chooses to help the affordable housing crisis and build an ADU on their property, that they should basically make themselves exempt from the STR permitting. And I'm not sure if that's something that we would do here within this ordinance, or if that would more so be regulated by staff ministerially in the issuance or not of short-term rental permits. And that's all I have.
Chair Halleck, I can speak to that if that's the pleasure of the
Please.
chair. And that is the short-term rental prohibition for the AD unit is I think properly part of this ordinance. The city does have a separate short-term rental ordinance in which the planning commission could review and suggest that amendment. I think it would make sense that the short-term rental in the existing ordinance also be amended to say, hey, where there's an ADU, one or two, none of the units can be rented on a short-term basis. But I will note your comment for presentation to the council.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to see that brought to the council, and if necessary, to come back around this way and
Sure.
we take a closer look at that for any necessary amendments. So let's work through the planning commission. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Berger.
Alex, thank you for your work with this, on this.
Welcome.
Just for clarification, this is essentially following the letter of the law for the ADUs and junior ADUs.
State law, yes.
Okay, then that sounds good.
Commissioner Jackshaw.
Well, I won't say disappointed, but our hands are tied to do anything. So you just give up and put your head in the sand, I guess. But one of the things in the past, the fire department, one of the reasons why we have setback rules was for the fire department to have access to a fire in the backyard or whatever. And I know we've had to get special permission from a police department, or excuse me, a fire department when an applicant wanted to extend a one-car garage into a two right up to the property line. And it did go through, but after the fire department came and looked at it and had no problem with it. Now that we have the maximum or minimum setback of 4 feet, do we find it necessary, or should we back again, just throw up our hands and give up as far as that's concerned?
Through the Chair Halleck, could I?
City Attorney Lorca, please.
It's a great point, Commissioner Jackshaw. And in fact, where folks are converting other existing structures, that setback can be less. And the only thing the city can do is to run it by the fire department. So when these permits come in for ministerial approval, much like a building permit, one of the few things that we can do is say, for health and safety reasons, can this be permitted? So the fire department will be brought into the review of these type of things. And yeah, 4 feet is, we're bound by that. We could go less, but again, I don't recommend, because exactly for things like you're talking about, Commissioner Jackshaw.
Yeah, because, we have these Tupperware sheds and everything all over the place,
Right.
that people don't even bother getting a permit for it, and I can see why. But now we're going to put on top of that an ADU that may block some amount. So I don't know how, maybe administratively, we can get the fire department out there, or even maybe the police department, to just go out there and take a quick look and say, yeah, this looks okay. It falls within the 4 feet and there's no obstruction.
Right.
Don't know.
And given the fact that most ADUs, so long as they're compliant with this current ordinance, should be adopted, we will have very little opportunity to view the footprint of said structures before they're approved. So a certain level of scrutiny will need to be exercised on the behalf of staff and our building official. And I suppose this would be considered a variance if there's some questionable condition, then it will have to come to us and then go through the process that the city attorney has just described.
Yeah, if I might, Chair, that's right. So much like a building permit review, a non-discretionary review can happen. So if the fire department has fire code, the question, just like a building code, whether it meets it or not, that's the discretion that the city has.
Thank you. All right, Vice Chairman Hayworth.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Alex, for all this. I mean, like everybody, it seems like a foregone conclusion for the most part. So there's just a couple of things that I'm concerned with. Number one is the additional burden that this is going to put on staff, having to make some decisions about things. And you know that there are going to be times when things are not cut and dry. And, Karen or whoever is going to have to be burdened with making those decisions. And I just think that's a tough position to put them in, first of all. We've already got a parking problem in our city. Look up Portola and, lots of the streets in the city. And, just another car here and there is just going to congest it even more. But I guess we don't have any latitude. So, but those are my big concerns. And Jeremy makes a good point about the, people moving out of their main house into the ADU and renting out their house. That's not the spirit of this. So I'd like to make sure that we put that and get that under control. And George's point about the fire department, I think that's important as well. That also, I think that's going to come down to a little more of a burden for staff too. So, but anyway, those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Krieger.
Yeah, Alex, thanks again, for all the hard work. Pretty much everything in there is what we've seen in the state law, and as everyone's been commenting, not a lot we can do with that. I would say, to Mike's concern, hopefully we can make this as objective as possible to help the staff make clear decisions. That way we get rid of as many of the gray areas as you can. That will certainly make it easier for them. I hear you on the parking. I know exactly what you're talking about. Portola Tweed is already a mess, and so I'm assuming I don't think there's any place in the city that's more than half a mile from the a bus stop. I'd be surprised if there were. And do we confirm that, Alex? Is that?
I have not plotted that out.
Okay. I would be very surprised though if there's any place that's more than half a mile from a bus stop. So yeah, we're probably stuck with it. But other than that, it's the aim's good, and I agree with Chairman Halleck about trying to just make sure we don't turn them into extra rental units. I got friends, I mentioned last time, in San Diego, and they did a big push. They've done a lot of ADUs, and they were not supposed to be short-term rentals, but I stayed in one. I will tell you, they're not managing it very well. I found out after my friends told me, like, oh, that's not supposed to be a short-term rental. I'm like, I don't know. It was an Airbnb and I rented it. And they're like, nah, it's not supposed to be. So hopefully we'll do we're a little bit smaller. We'll do a little better job of managing that. It's a good point.
Yeah, it's an enforcement question, and
it is totally
cruising,
totally.
Online
Yeah.
postings and things like that is something that can be done. But
Right.
like you said, it's not, there's not 1,000% way to make sure, everybody's complying, unfortunately.
Well, we're being small helps. Monterey, I know, has people that occasionally goes through Airbnb looking for them, and but we're a small community. Hopefully we'll write the ordinance so that we can enforce it, and then we'll just have to get all hands on deck to enforce it. Thanks.
All right. Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin.
Yeah, real quick. Thanks, Alex, for your hard work on this. One comment, Jeremy, I agree with you on the not moving into your ADU and renting out your main house for a short-term rental. I'm not sure if you could do anything about long-term rentals with it as well, but that's probably an immaterial question. One question I would have for Alex is, when we talk about the additional burden on staff when you have a questionable application, it seems to me, I remember in the presentations, it was pretty much a checkbox. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. If you had one that didn't fit in one of those boxes, could there be a 2-person ad hoc committee of the planning commission that it just goes to? They look at it, they check it off or don't check it off. You know,
It's a
because
great-
it's speed is the essence. I understand that part, but you'd have like 2 days to turn it around because I think the city gets 30 days to turn one around.
60.
60. So you'd have time to do a quick review. So if Karen's like, I'm not sure about this guy, pop it off to a couple of folks real quick. They look at it and go, yeah, or no, or we need to call the fire department or whatever. But it would pull that back more towards the planning commission area and take it off of staff. That's the only question that I really have.
Through the chair, I think that's it's a good question. The staff has 60 days to process the, and to make the determination. If it's found that, if it's found that the project or the ADU plans do not comply with the checkbox, there's still the opportunity to go through the discretionary permit process. And that would, whether that be Karen or the planning, it'd probably come to you as just like any other use permit would, for processing that way. If it didn't just check the boxes and was subject, like I said, to a discretionary approval process rather than the ministerial one.
Thank you. Answers my question. Appreciate it. That's it for me.
Commissioner Woods. You're muted. You are muted, Commissioner Wood.
Can't hear. Can you call in real quick? Is there the phone number on the agenda?
Denise, if you can hear us, can you call in? Okay.
Okay, well, we will give her a moment to do that. And I would just like to echo what Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin, just the question that he posed with the city attorney. And also, yes, of course, extend our help to staff wherever we can, wherever is permissible, without crossing the line of entering into a discretionary review. Being well-versed and familiar with ADU ordinances, perhaps we could be of help, and we certainly will lend it to staff when needed. Is Commissioner Wood online now?
You're still muted, Denise.
Denise, try pushing your space bar while you talk.
Am I
There you
there? I'm on. Yay. Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, a single dwelling unit can have 2 ADUs and 1 junior ADU on one property. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and do we have anything in our regulations about site coverage? Like how much concrete can you have in one resident?
The site coverage restrictions are preempted by state law.
So it's only, so you can have, well, you're saying so just 4 feet around a fence and everything else can be all concrete and building.
To the extent that it's ADU related.
Wow. So that supersedes any kind of regulations the city has about.
Site coverage, floor
Like-
area ratio, density, all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Wow. Ah, okay. And then what if parking becomes a safety hazard?
Sorry, I'm just writing.
Okay.
I think
Well, I would
the requirement for a parking space is preempted by state law. However,
Uh-huh.
the way I read it, the police department still has the right to enforce parking restrictions on the street. We're not posted 72-hour limit or we're posted
Right.
things like that. So that it doesn't take away the power of the police to regulate health and safety with respect to parking. It's just, you can't have a requirement of the development of an ADU. In certain circumstances, the parking restrictions are limited.
Ah, yeah. Okay. There's no wiggle room here, is there?
Very little.
Very little. And another question is, does this impact the Oaks at all?
You know, the Oaks is a multifamily,
Right.
yeah, building.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, there are some regulations in there talking about, you know, how many are allowed and coverage and things like that.
Right. So it's possible to have ADUs in the Oaks.
It is possible if there's some non-residential areas of the Oaks. I'm trying to think of a circumstance in which
Yeah, I
that would
don't-
be possible, but
Don't think there is.
there are multifamily regulations
Yeah.
in here that are copied from state law. But yeah, I think it would be difficult unless there was, you know, I'm trying to think of an example, you know, people always
Yeah,
throw
I
around the word, you know, boiler room or something like that, that was converted. Perhaps that could happen. But in the Oaks, it's a little bit different in the sense that I think each individual unit is owned rather than owned by one single owner, in, you know, that may be motivated to turn a former conference room or dining room into an ADU in a multifamily thing. So
Uh-huh.
I'm hard pressed to think of an example where they would.
Yeah, I didn't know if that
Yeah.
is something
Yeah.
that might,
Mhm.
okay. And, oh, and I think that is all my, yeah. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Wood. City Manager Girton, would you like to weigh in on this at all? At your pleasure, sir.
Yeah, if I can figure out how to unmute myself. I don't really have anything to add. I appreciate all of the support for staff and the extra workload that we have. I can tell you that we do the short-term rental search every once in a while just to make sure that people are following the rules. So we are on top of that, just like the city of Monterey. But like all of you, I'd just like to thank Alex for all of his work on this. I think this is a great product given what he had to work with.
Thank you, City Manager Girton. And
Jeremy, I have a question.
Commissioner Jack Shaw and Commissioner Hayworth.
Go ahead, George.
Well, piggybacking on what Denise said, I think that if somebody applies for administratively multiple ADUs on their property, that may trigger the fire department to go up and say, you know, how crowded it is, or it might be a problem for them. That's all I wanted to say.
Go ahead, Vice Chairman Hayworth.
So, Alex, there's stuff in here about fees and impact fees and impact, all of that. Are we to set a fee schedule? Are those fees paid to the city? You know, how
They-
much and to who?
Through the chair, yes, there are development impact fees. Certain sizes you'll see in the ordinance are exempt from impact fees. Both the fee for the permit as well as any development impact fee are something that the city can do pursuant to its yearly master fee schedule, which is usually amended once a year, maybe more. In which case the city could undertake a study, much like we do a building permit fee. About, you know, you get an average of how much staff time to process a permit, you get their overhead rate, and the city can charge up to that for the permit fee. Development impact fees are kind of the same thing. It's in the nature of there's development going on in the city, and therefore the city has the ability to charge some sort of money for that. Generally, both of those things are predicated by a study showing, okay, what is the reason, what amount of money is reasonably related to the impact that this ADU is going to have? And for the permit, what is a reasonable estimation of the burden on the city to process these permits? And therefore, that becomes the permit fee. So there's permit fee and development impact fees, and that's something that the city manager, you know, I think can look into, and we probably will, just to help offset some of the staff cost and some of the impact to the city.
All right, thank you.
You know what? I had one more question.
Commissioner Woods.
Sorry, it's about an existing building. Is there any kind of what constitutes an existing building? Does it have to have a foundation? Is there any kind of,
Yeah.
I guess some detail in there we can put?
So an existing building, I think, would be sort of in the city's building records.
Okay, so a
Perhaps
shed,
perhaps
not,
there's buildings that predate that, but yes, I mean, I think it was Commissioner Jack Shaw that sort of said these sort of, plastic Tupperware sheds and things like
Right,
that. I
right,
don't
right,
think
right,
that'd be considered,
Yeah, but-
considered a building, could it be considered a structure?
See, that's what I'm
But-
saying. It says
right.
structure. So what is it? That could be
Right.
anything.
Right. So, but again,
I-
for human habitation, the building code would apply. So if it was a tough shed, that's not human habitation. Now, could they physically place and reconstruct? If it met the building code requirements, yes, they could.
Right. Wow. Okay.
All right. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion to,
Through the
Well-
chair.
sir,
Perhaps Mr. Clark has a public comment.
public comment, yes. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the discussion concerning the draft accessory dwelling unit ordinance?
Go, Jim.
Any members of the public?
He's got his hand up. Look.
Mr. Clark, please.
There we go. So this is just really interesting, and I hope I'm not a Johnny come lately on this one and have missed this information either earlier on in this meeting or an early meeting. But I don't know, besides all the unintended consequences that Sacramento is not looking at for a city like ours, which you have all covered. I guess the one thing listening to it today, is my concern is there some point that the city is legally liable for something that goes wrong if an ADU is permitted, even though the city didn't have any input for permitting that ADU? Let's say, for instance, it gets so close to the property line that the firefighters can't get around and put out a fire, and therefore somebody dies. And then somebody says, well, hey, the city allowed this to be permitted, therefore the city is liable, or something along those lines. So anyway, I just throwing that one out there. That's all.
Right, thank you, Mr. Clark. Any other comments from the public? So if not, I will entertain a motion to send this to city council, send the draft accessory dwelling unit ordinance to city council for further review and potential adoption.
I move that we forward this to the city council.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, sorry, second.
All right, the city clerk will perform roll call for the vote, please.
Commissioner Jackshaw,
Reluctantly, yes.
Commissioner Hayworth,
Yes.
Commissioner Krieger,
Yes.
Commissioner Berger,
Yes.
Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin,
Yes.
Chairman Howlick.
Yes. All right, the.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner
And-
Wood.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
By my tally, the vote passes unanimously with one wavering of reluctance. However, we'll send that upstream to the city council. Thank you again, City Attorney Lorca, for all your diligent work on this drafting this accessory dwelling unit ordinance for us.
You're welcome.
All right, and item 7B, as it were, we are to consider a flag policy ad hoc committee members. So just a brief history on where we are, where we've been here. We have been tasked by the city council after recent events in drafting a flag policy for the city, of which we have none. My initial intention, as announced last planning commission meeting during our commissioners' comments segment, was that I would simply draft a flag policy, issue it to staff, to have it agendized and included in the package for and made available to the public, of course, and then brought to the following planning commission meeting to for review, edits, addendums, with further public input and outreach. It was suggested by a fellow Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin, mentioned that perhaps we should bring it back to ourselves before staff had a look at it. I did ask for further guidance from City Manager Girton. He suggested that we have a minority of the Planning Commission, 3 of us, form a flag policy, I hesitate to use the phrase, subcommittee to figure out a flag policy. In further discussions with City Manager Girton in his office as to how to go about that, I had initially said that I would reach out to each commissioner individually. I want to do things transparently, fairly, everything on the level. So it was questionable as to how that was permissible, how I would be able to do that without any violations of Brown Act and so on and so forth. And so there was some discussion about forming a special meeting. That was merely, 3 weeks ago now. But this is our next available opportunity, so we're doing it here now today. I like the way it's agendized. Consider a flag policy ad hoc committee. To me, ad hoc really definitively means as needed or as necessary. I'm wondering the level of necessity as to why we can't really do this by the usual process. I do, however, have the utmost confidence in City Manager Girton's guidance and recommendation that we form a minority committee to proceed. So at this point, City Manager Girton, would you like to weigh in and give a little direction? And then I'd like to work through the commission for some discussions as to how we'd like to do that. And then I'm seeing that we will probably, amongst ourselves, either take volunteers for the 3 positions or nominate in and amongst ourselves the committee to do so. Some guidance there, please.
Yeah, I don't know how you all normally go about setting up committee meetings. Like I said, this type of staff work is something that I'm more accustomed to coming to staff to do the work and then presenting to the commission. I'm not used to commission, to the council assigning commission this type of staff work. So this is a new process for me as well. So however you guys normally would go about setting up a committee or an ad hoc committee would be fine. I would imagine just asking for volunteers and then somebody nominating would probably be the best route to go.
All right, thank you, City Manager Girton. Yeah, this is new territory for all of us, actually. And admittedly, as I've said before, this is not typically, a policy draft is not something that we would take on. Things are kind of in reverse order, but more than eager and willing to take on the task and rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
I'll just say just point blank, this seems to be a very simplistic process to me. Admittedly, I'm not, I've already created a rough draft that I had it intended to present to the Planning Commission through the process that I've just described. Honestly, this has been a cut and paste sort of a document that I have borrowed from other municipalities and jurisdictions, cities from across the nation. It's all very straightforward. It consists of a federal flag code, a state flag code, neither of which we can really alter very much, if at all, and then a city flag code, which of course, at our discretion, we can alter a bit if need be. But all 3 really fall under what I'm finding just as a general government flag code on a local level. The mayor had expressed some confusion as to what defines a commemorative flag. So there was a bit of content to that point, just clarifying what the commemorative flag was. I will say that, just that, also, essentially, we are not we are not taking the position to decide which flags will fly or will not. That will not be the Planning Commission's responsibility. We are just to draft a procedure, a policy for a procedure that will be followed for the adoption or rejection of any flag or banner from other than the 3 flags that I've mentioned that may or may not be flown. Again, it just seems like a very straightforward process to me. I'd like to, my role as the chair here is to behave and steer this as efficiently and effectively, considering time and city resources as possible. I'm entirely willing to just make a submission, or we should go through the commission and build a group of a minority, the 3 of us, or 3 among us, I should say. And I'll just go on record as saying that before I go to the next commissioner for any input, it's not an exclusionary perspective at all. In fact, it's an entirely inclusive perspective that I personally hold. However, my own personal ideas may not be consistent with the rest of the commission or the entire city. But I do believe that, for nearly 70 years, without a policy, by the way, I think it's important to note that also I don't think it's a legal requirement to actually have a flag policy. However, it's good practice to exercise the adoption of any flag that may be flown through a transparent process and whatnot. But I just wholeheartedly feel that anyone has the right to symbolize or stand for whatever they believe in. Be it their own property, you have the absolute right to express yourself however you like. But this city government building, and I suppose the only other one we have is the old city hall in the park. Any government building flies those 3 flags, the US flag, the Californian flag, and the Delray Oaks flag. And that covers us all. We are all Americans. We are all Californians, and we're all Delray Oaks citizens, and that includes and honors and respects everyone. We might recall the Pledge of Allegiance that we just read. It's one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Those flags cover everyone. And so, point being, we can go through this process and we can develop a policy which has been requested of us. I'd also like to say that we need to strongly consider when we do, we'd better get ourselves a few more flagpoles because there are a lot of third-party causes. I'm a huge advocate of the Susan G. Komen Foundation. My dear sweet mother survived breast cancer, thanks be to God. I'm of Irish Catholic lineage. I might like to see the Irish American Heritage flag flown in the month of March. I may like to see the breast cancer awareness flag flown for the entire month of October. Point being, every day, every week, every month of the year, there is some cause, some level of awareness, some third-party expression that's possible. And who are we to say, or it would be the council's discretion, who are we to say which flag, we allow one other than the 3 that encompass the entire community? And who would we be to say one can fly, but another cannot? Who gets to make those decisions? I just think that in the spirit of what seems to be inclusivity, there leaves a lot of room for exclusivity and exclusion at some point. So it's a very viable option to just leave it as is, or we go through the process of developing this policy. And we'll leave that to the, the holistic decision of the entire commission. Yes, Mr. City Attorney.
Sorry, chime in, but just, you know, with Brown Act considerations in mind, the topic before you is the appointment to the committee. And so the chair teed it up nicely, but substantive discussions with respect to positions on flag policy should probably be held for the body or group that is ultimately tasked with that responsibility.
Thank you, City Attorney.
Sure.
So let's go through the ranks here. George has had his, Commissioner Jackshaw's had his hand up.
Well, I lost you a while back there, Jeremy, but if there's a committee, I volunteer to be on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackshaw. Commissioner Hayworth. Vice
Thank
Chairman
you.
Hayworth.
If it's customary in most jurisdictions, as the city manager has mentioned, for staff to draft such a policy, why don't we let them do that and let it come to us? If that's the case, you mentioned early on in your dissertation that the mayor didn't want us to limit what kinds of flags we fly. I'm not so sure that maybe that's not what's needed, and kind of smacks of the sign ordinance a bit as well. And a lot of this is just flag etiquette. I mean, flag etiquette is, you could look that up. I mean, that's, they tell you what flags to fly, when and how you put them up and put them down, and, when they're at half staff and all that stuff. So, I mean, that's the easy part. The rest of it is, do we need another flagpole because of, how many flags are we going to fly? Are we going to limit the number of flags that we fly? Those are the kinds of things. I mean, the flag etiquette stuff is easy. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I'm for having the city manager draft an ordinance and have it come to us. If there is a flag committee that needs to be formed, I would be on it.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Hayworth. And just before I ran out of breath, I was thinking of suggesting the same. I mean, we accept the assignment. However, it's not out of the realm of possibility that we reject the assignment and revert it to city staff to draft and then submit to us for review and go about things in the typical fashion. So I concur. City Manager Gurdon?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, and Alex can tell me if I step out of line here, but I think we could take the work that you started with. I made the point when you and I met the first time that I really appreciate the fact that we have commissioners who are willing to take time out of your lives to volunteer to help staff out, because we do have such a limited staff. But we could certainly take the work that you've done and run with that. And then we're not really taking you all out of the picture. We'll bring it back to you so that you're still taking the action that the council asked you to do before we take it to the council for their approval. So we'll bring it back to you for input. And I still think that honors the direction that the council gave you all.
Thank you, City Manager Gurdon. And so, Commissioner Krieger, are you with us?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. I agree with the city manager. I think if they can draft it and bring it back to us to review, I mean, certainly we can make it ad hoc or subcommittee, that's fine. But yeah, I think that's probably not a bad route to go if we can do it.
Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that. I mean, they're going to be the ones that'll have to somewhat deal with it going forward at any rate. So if they want to draft something up and get it back to us, my concern specifically last time was a single person drafting an ordinance and then the review process that was given after it. But a committee is fine, but if city manager wants to take a stab at it, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of cities around here that have them. It's probably not a real hard thing to come up with. I know there are lists of approved flags to fly during approved days, approved months, approved weeks, both at the state and federal level. So I don't see any problem at all as long as it's inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Woods.
Great idea. Yep, it's a go. Sounds good. Oh, man, I'm still.
Do you want to elaborate?
There we go. Hello. Yeah, no, great idea. I think it should definitely go back to staff and then back to us. No.
No, we heard you.
Okay.
So who does that leave? Has everyone, Commissioner Berger?
I think, yeah, I think the suggestions are spot on. I think Mike is right in having staff write it up and us review it. I also think agree that there should be some sort of limitation, whether it's quantity or content. Some things can be offensive, and I think we ought to review what could be offensive.
All right. And so we have a few ideas. Go ahead, Commissioner Jackshaw.
Well, I volunteered to be on the committee, but I don't know if there's going to be a committee, so I just wanted to give my comment. I don't think we should have another flag. We have the American flag, the California flag, the Delray Oaks flag, and then we'll put something underneath there, and then we'll go flag at half mast, and then it'll be dragging in the dirt. I think we should leave it at that. And if somebody wants to put up, a flag, I'm of Czech heritage. I think maybe at some point, I think we should put up the Czechs in the mail flag. And so I think that it just gets out of hand. Who's qualified for it? And I think we ought to keep those three flags. And if you want a flag, you want to fly a flag, whatever you want to, put up a flagpole in your yard and we'll go from there. That's my comment. If we don't have a committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackshaw. So at this point, I'd like to go out to the public and get some input from the public. I see Gary's iPhone. Is that Commissioner Krieger? Has he switched over?
He switched over.
I also see Allison Kerr and Jim Clark. Would any member of
Yeah,
the public?
Yes, I'm sorry, Chairman. I was trying to tell you, I want to make sure I got it up and running. I am going mobile because I've got to start heading to the airport, but I'll stay on my phone as long as I can.
All right. I thought perhaps it was somebody else on your phone. I saw you using your phone, so I thought maybe somebody else had chimed into your party. But I see Mr. Clark with his finger up. Go right ahead, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Jim Clark, Villa Verde and Delray Oaks. Oh, what did he do? He got rid of my Word document. There it is. Okay. I got it, Randy. Don't worry. Here's what I think. And I'm not going to be just a no. I'm going to be a yes. Flagpole, just say no. Yes to individual freedom of expression. From where I sit, it appears that this whole push for a second flagpole is to bring everyone's attention to nationally based special interest groups or special interest ideas. DRO has, for the 2 decades I have lived here, been focused on local events and the city. And we were friends and we respected one another. The introduction of national hot buttons has done, in the last 3 years, has done nothing to bring us together, but exactly the opposite. Whether that be the Irish Americans, the POW, the Blue Line Month. Looking behind one of the commissioners, he'd probably like to have a flag that says BMW and Porsche Awareness Month. Or Commissioner Bill might want a Catalina Athletics flag flowing. I know Jeremy and I would love to fly the Wisconsin Cheeseheads flag down at City Hall, and so on and so on. So I would like to put forth a radical idea. We can all agree on a single pole and the flags flowing being US, state, and city. That represents every one of us. Anything over and above that is either commemorative or special interest group, and regardless of the heartstrings that it pulls, we have the option of not spending money for an extra pole. We have the option to just let all those that have a special interest that they have, their passion, be flowing from their yards. And I believe that if somebody really feels that they really, really want to support Breast Cancer Awareness Month by flying a flag, they can do it from their own yard, their front porch. More power to them. And there again, I think that is something we can all agree on, that people have that right and that privilege to have interests and concerns different from mine. I don't see how it brings people together to continue to try and force one's beliefs or passions on the city as a whole, or how that represents the citizens of Delray Oaks. So I ask you to consider simply saying no to the flagpole, and by inference, all flags flown at City Hall other than US, state, or city. Choose not to spend money on this pole, flags, staff time to hang them, and on and on. Say yes to individual freedom of expression. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any other members of the public care to comment? I do not see any hands raised electronically. Again, I'll note that I really expected and hoped for more public outreach and input on this. It's a very it's a hot button topic, and I really expected more people to be here tonight, but I think that wraps up our public comment. So before we move on to any sort of motion, further discussion, I would just like to circle back and acknowledge City Attorney Lorca's critique of my dissertation. My best attempt was merely to express options at both ends of the spectrum and try to remain as non-opinionated and maintain as much objectivity as I could, noting what the city attorneys brought to our attention. I see that I may have fallen a bit short of that. He mentioned those ominous words, Brown Act violation. I certainly don't want to discredit myself, the commission, or the people I represent with such behavior. So I would only hope that you don't judge me by my mistakes, and rather how I learn from them and move forward. This is my official attempt to acknowledge and hopefully to cure a potential violation at this level. And unless anyone else would like to stretch me on the rack, if that's okay with everyone, I apologize and I'd like to move forward. Thank you all very much. Now then, Mr. Berger?
I don't think an apology was necessary. I think we all understand the high standards you hold and your good intentions.
I do appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Berger. All right, so yes, Mr. Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin.
You can call me Bill. It's okay. Actually, what I wanted to put out there was I was going to put forth a motion to, if this is okay, Alex, to go ahead and bump this on over to the city manager for what we had already talked about. I'll just make a motion that we do it as long as it's legitimate and go from there.
Let me keep this steered according to the agenda, first of all. Now, there's been some expression from our city manager, and we all know that we have a small town staff, and they can sometimes be overworked. We've just extended, an offer of assistance wherever we can. We have been tasked by our city council and trusted with the responsibility of taking on this task. And again, I'll rise to it. I'm already neck deep in drafting this ordinance, which I'd be happy to bring to two other, whether it includes myself or not, that's to decide amongst us. I'm actually leaning towards, we could go either way, but I'm leaning towards staying with the process. I think that we can all convene within the next 30 days, get this back to the Planning Commission as a whole. It's a matter of another month that this will be prolonged. It was expressed in the city council meeting that it was desired to be completed by September. That was maybe not so feasible. Yes, City Attorney Lorca, am I out of bounds again?
No, not at all. I was just cleaning the camera there. I apologize.
Oh,
And for the record, I don't think you were out of bounds previously. It was just a word of caution as the group entered discussion.
and I appreciate that. I'm always willing to accept advice from those that see where I may be blind. And so, in continuance, I believe we should undertake the responsibility. As I said, I'm already well through the process. We can nominate. That's the item on the agenda for this evening, to consider the ad hoc committee members. So we decide on that first and foremost. We'll consider that. I'll entertain a motion. Should we form an ad hoc?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. There was a motion made by Commissioner Ragdale Cronin. If he wants to withdraw the motion, he can. Otherwise, you should probably just go through the process of entertaining a second and a broader vote. So.
Yes, Commissioner, thank you, City Attorney Lorca. Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin, would you like to table or withdraw, I should say, that previous motion?
I will withdraw that motion and also offer to volunteer to be on the committee.
Thank you. So I'd like to fast track this. I would actually like to, I would like to, well, I can't make the motion, but I will entertain a motion for that we move forward with forming an ad hoc committee for the flag policy, drafting of the flag policy.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
All in favor? And the city clerk will take roll call, please, for the vote.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayworth,
No.
Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin,
Yes.
Commissioner Jack Shaw,
yes.
Commissioner Berger,
No.
Chair Halleck.
Yes.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Krieger.
Yes.
So that is 5-2. Motion passes by majority, if I tallied that correctly.
Yes.
All right, so we have decided that we will form an ad hoc committee for the drafting of the flag policy. We can do this either by nominations or volunteers. I've heard a couple of volunteers already. I would like to nominate Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin, and I actually had Commissioner Wood in mind.
Oh, really?
Everybody excited about that?
Oh, see, I've lived through the sign committee. I would,
All right. Well, you've
yeah,
done your
thank you for the consideration, but I will,
you've done your tour of duty then.
yes, thank you.
Then I will withdraw the second nomination and throw that over to Commissioner Jack Shaw.
Sounds good to me.
And I'd like to be on it myself, since I've already kind of paved the way. I've got, as I said, I've drafted. So if everyone,
I'd like to nominate you also, Jeremy.
all right.
I concur.
Well then, I think we're getting there. I will, so let's entertain a motion to approve an elected amongst our own body, an ad hoc committee to draft a flag policy consisting of Chairman Hallock, Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin, and Commissioner Jack Shaw.
So moved.
And a
I'll second it.
All in favor? Would you like to do?
Aye.
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 If we could do a roll call on that one, sorry to be
Yes,
fussy, but that's the
City
requirement.
clerk will please perform a roll call.
Commissioner Hayworth,
Yes.
Commissioner Wood,
Yes.
Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin,
Yes.
Commissioner Berger,
Yes.
Commissioner Jack Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Krieger,
Yes.
Chair Halleck.
Yes. Thank you. Passes unanimously. So the three of us will convene and get to work on this. I'd like to ask of the city attorney, I'm glad you're here till the end of the meeting, Mr. City Attorney. how can we ethically and fairly proceed? Are we hereby allowed to contact each other, having formed this subcommittee, on an individual basis? Does this need to be noticed to the public before? Do we need to go through the typical FPPC process? Please.
Because it is indeed truly an ad hoc committee to study something, you can always notice the meetings if you so choose, but don't have to, as there is not a majority of the body. And the three of you can work through City Hall to schedule meetings and get together and start your work.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so I will reach out to my fellow commissioners very soon, and we'll get to work on this and get it all. We'll finalize the draft that I've begun. We'll get it all tightened up and through staff, bring it back to the rest of the commission by our next monthly meeting next month. Before we move on, City Manager Girton, how'd we do?
I think you did great. So I just, one simple request, if before it comes back to the full commission, if the city attorney and I could have a look at it, because somebody so wisely stated earlier, we are going to be the ones forced or who are going to have to enforce this.
Yes, sir, will do. All right, thank you, Mr. City Manager. All right, moving on. We're at item number 8, announcements, comments by the planning commissioners. I'll make it easy. I have none further this evening. Vice Chairman Hayworth,
Good, thank you all.
Commissioner Woods,
Thank you. Nothing.
Commissioner Berger.
Nice seeing everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin.
Yes, I have a couple things. One point of order. I don't recall actually voting to approve the minutes. We kind of got a second and a third and a fourth, but there was no roll call vote on that. So we probably need to check into that and make sure we did it. And secondly, I wanted to bring to the commission's attention that during the discussions of the last meeting on the property on the other side of the canyon from me, and I can't remember the address, that wanted to build the addition that had the wall and stuff. It comes to mind that one, our process may need a little tweaking. The architect was looking for some kind of a little bit of a, yeah, you can build it if it meets this stuff. And secondly, I've seen and heard a couple of statements made during other things. This is just too big. This doesn't fit. I think we need to have some architecture review guidelines. City of Seaside has them. City of Monterey has them. City of Pacific Grove has them. City of Carmel has them. They actually have architectural review committees or boards that plans go to first, and then they work their way through that process and then actually come to the planning commission for final approval. So with the commission's grace, I will put together some stuff for the next meeting and get it all out to you in a week or so before the next meeting to just look through it and start considering adoption of an architectural review committee or guidelines, so that when somebody brings something to us, we have actually something that says it can't be this, it can't be that, it should be this, it should be that. Similar to what Ms. Woods was talking about, square footage coverage and things that are in the planning commission. But for example, in Carmel, they don't like flat top roofs. They're saying they should not be, we don't like them, we don't want them. I don't have an issue with flat top roofs, but maybe we need to look at different architectural designs. You don't want a super modern house against a super old school looking house. I think you have some considerations in there, and having guidelines takes away that, well, I just don't like that, because I just don't like that as a lawsuit waiting to happen to the city when you turn down someone because I don't like it. So having some kind of backup to I don't like it is like, I don't like it because. So I've already printed out a couple of them. I will print out a few more, or at least provide the links to folks if they want to take a look at it. But I think it is something going forward this commission should have in their back pocket, as especially coming up with the ADU stuff. And we may be getting a lot more building going on in the city, plus the properties out in Fort Ord, should that ever come to fruition for building. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm glad you brought both points up, actually. You said across the canyon, I believe you're on the north side. So on my side of the canyon, or our side of the canyon, the project that you brought up, I'd like to discuss that also briefly. I recall that when reviewing that project, absolutely nary a word was spoken about concerning architectural review, any aesthetic features whatsoever. Every single commissioner delved into dry wells, retaining walls, which we don't do, engineering concepts, lateral drift, drainage, foundation issues, this, that, and the other. In a nutshell, I'd just like to say we need to simplify and stay in our lane and do our jobs just concisely and appropriately. We need not delve off into areas of building official approval or engineering or architectural or design and whatnot outside of our scope of architectural review. And to your point of the building requirements, we actually do have, I believe you may be referencing a project that took place, a lot of push and pull on the Bray Place, 11 Bray Place project. And those comments were made. That was actually a quote. I just think it's too big. And you brought that up once before, and I agree. However, we do have building requirements as far as proportional lot coverage, square footage relative to lot size, both first and second story, and all. And you're absolutely right. We need to not be so biased and opinionated, and as concerned with what catches our eye or not, but rather what our regulations either do or do not allow. You're absolutely right. And at any time, any commissioner, if you have any further input, if we can gather from several pools, several areas of resource and draw in, then please, by all means, bring it to the Planning Commission. There's always room for improvement on as we move forward. So thank you for that. Yes, Commissioner Hayworth.
So, when we get these things, that's what we are. We are architectural review. That's what the ARC stands for, is architectural review. In the 70s, this body was called I think it was called the Architectural Review Board or something like that nature. My father was on it back then. We do have all the building codes and all the ordinances and all of that cover a lot of the things that we're talking about. And, a lot of the things, the architectural review things, they'll say, textures and colors to match existing. So often there's not a whole lot of reason for a lot of discussion about those kinds of things. So if that's what you're looking for, there's probably not much need. So I just thought I wanted to throw those 2 cents.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Hayworth. Commissioner Jackshaw.
Yes, I'll concur with Mike. We've done this in the past many times about giving suggestions to an applicant that their house was too big, or the wall was too high, not enough windows, and to bring it back. I don't know if with a small city, we need to start making things way more complicated than what they need to be. But on Bill's point 2, I don't know if we're going to get sued because we don't like something. But those are usually based on the rest of the neighborhood, not our personal or thoughts. If something just down the street, there was a house, he wanted to do a complete 2-story that was way out of character for the surrounding houses, and we asked them to downsize. So back to Mike's thing, we are part of the Architectural Review Board also. My only comment.
Commissioner Burr, City Attorney Lorca, did you have something?
Nope.
No. Commissioner Berger? You are muted, Commissioner Berger. We'll move on to.
How about that? Is that? I think I'm here now. Can you hear me now? Just to add on to what Mike Mike, Commissioner Hayworth and Jack Shaw said, we went through a process before I was on the planning commission. We were looking at a property that had a questionable finish on an exterior. And Karen was quick to point out that we are part of it, architecture. It's part of our definition. And that we are an architectural review committee as well. And words like cohesive and fitting of the neighborhood were used, which does help describe what the architectural principles are.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. And Commissioner Krieger. Commissioner Krieger, you have service. We've lost you in transit. There he is. Yes? I think he's in a tough.
Oh, no. Marina.
Commissioner Woods, did you have anything?
Yes, I do actually. And I think Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin, let me see. Oh, there I am. Yeah, I think has actually some point. It's, you know, we're architectural review.
I'm sorry. I lost things up. Commissioner Krieger, we'll come back to you.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. Great.
Yes, Commissioner Krieger, please proceed. I'll come right back to you, Commissioner Woods.
No, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, yes, I've managed to mostly stay in. Good discussion, but nothing to add at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Krieger. Yes, Commissioner Woods.
Oh, I thank you very much for all that. I like having this conversation. I think what we do need maybe is just a little more direction on what our architectural review kind of what look are we looking for the city? So some kind of just general guidelines. And I know some projects they're worried about, the neighbor can look down on me. So if there was something on the plans with some landscape, there's never a landscape drawing. And I think some projects might need that. Maybe that's because that's where I come from. So I'm a little biased, but I think it can solve some of the problems that the neighbors are concerned about. And that should actually be on a plan and checked. So maybe add that in.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. And so I'll, a little discussion here at the end. I'll invite everyone that hasn't done so yet to look through our code of ordinances and really familiarize ourselves with our scope of power and our scope of force in the decision-making process, what our responsibilities are. We'll find it very clearly outlined there. There are a few gray areas as far as paint colors, what have you. But, landscaping can be considered in projects. A lot of times we'll find that out through opposition by a neighbor, and we'll try to mediate between the two parties by incorporating landscaping. So there is some flexibility in there that might not be there in black and white in our job description, basically, within our scope of force. But let's all take a close look at that and adhere to it and make things as streamlined and efficient as we can in the future. Does anyone have anything else?
Chair Halleck?
Yes.
If I might, to Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin's point, if the chair would entertain reopening the consent agenda item and doing a roll call vote, just so we cross our T's and dot our I's, that perhaps would be a good idea.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Concerning the adoption of the accepting of the minutes. So let's review item number 3. We had, let's just open it up again. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the August 11th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'm just going to second that. Would you like to do a roll call, Madam City Clerk, for the vote?
Commissioner Hayworth,
Yes.
Commissioner Wood,
Yes.
Commissioner Krieger,
Yes.
Commissioner Berger,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackshaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Ragsdale Cronin,
Yes.
Chair Halleck.
Yes. All right, jumping ahead to item number 9. Next meeting will be Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And item number 10, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Hallelujah.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
everybody.
nice evening, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.